So how does a private company, a group of clerks and merchants working out of a tiny office in London, end up conquering an entire subcontinent? Well, that's the story of the English East India Company, and it's really the story of how the British Empire got its start.
To really get this story, you first got to meet a brand new character on the world stage, the Nabob. This was the nickname the British had for company guys who went to India and came back just ridiculously rich. And the name itself, it's a clever twist on the Indian word for a ruler, Nawab, which tells you everything you need to know about the kind of power these guys suddenly had.
And that really leads us to the big question we're tackling here. How on earth did these ordinary men, guys who started out as simple clerks, manage to stack up fortunes that could literally rival royalty? What was this machine that was pumping out all this incredible wealth?
To answer that, let's look at the ultimate poster boy for the Nabobs, a guy named Robert Clive. He first shows up in India way back in 1743 as just another company clerk, but he quickly became the mastermind behind its military and political power, winning the key battles that would lay the foundation for an empire.
So when Clive finally left India for good, his personal fortune was worth over £400,000. Now, in today's money, we're talking tens, maybe even hundreds of millions. It was so much money that it actually kicked off an investigation in Parliament back in Britain, which, makes you wonder, where did all that cash come from?
Well, the answer lies in one region, Bengal. This place was transformed by the company into a massive engine for generating unbelievable profit.
Okay, so after they took military control, the company set up this thing called a dual government. Now, on the surface, local Nawabs were still there, like figureheads, but all the real power? That was held by the company. They squeezed these rulers for huge gifts. And then, and this was the brilliant part for them, they stopped sending money from Britain to buy Indian goods. Instead, they just used Bengal's own tax money to buy local products to ship abroad. It created this perfect one-way pipeline of wealth straight out of India.
But this ruthless siphoning of wealth wasn't just some abstract economic plan. For the people of Bengal, it had absolutely catastrophic consequences.
In 1770, a terrible drought hit, and it plunged the region into one of the worst famines in history. And the company's policies, which had just stripped the area of its resources and basically wrecked its government, turned a natural disaster into a full-blown human catastrophe. A staggering one-third of Bengal's entire population was affected. Millions died.
But the company's success wasn't just built on this economic machine. They were also total masters at playing the political game in 18th century India, which was, to put it mildly, a land of intense rivalries.
You have to picture it. The subcontinent was this giant chessboard of powerful competing kingdoms. The Marathas, Mysore, Hyderabad, you name it, and they were all fighting each other for land and power. This was a century of non-stop conflict and constantly shifting alliances, long before the British ever became the top dog.
And all this chaos? It was the perfect opportunity for the British. They came up with a playbook that was just brutally effective. Divide, conquer, and profit.
The heart of their strategy was actually pretty simple. They realized they didn't have to beat everyone all at once. They just had to pick a side in a local fight, help one Indian power crush another, and then step in and claim the real prize for themselves.
And you see this strategy play out time and time again. So to weaken the powerful state of Mysore, who did the British team up with? Mysore's biggest rivals, the Marathas and the Nizam. But then later on, when they wanted to go after the Marathas, they just switched sides and allied with the Nizam against them. Indian rulers kept siding with the British to beat their immediate enemy, never quite realizing they were helping a much bigger threat take over the whole game.
But let's be absolutely clear. These interventions were never about politics just for politics' sake. Every single military move, every political deal, was all calculated to protect and grow the East India Company's business. Profit. That was always the bottom line. The wars against Mysore are a perfect case study. I mean, why did the British go after them so relentlessly? Well, number one, Mysore controlled the super valuable spice trade on the Malabar coast. 2, its power was a threat to the British base in Madras. 3, Mysore was buddies with Britain's arch-nemesis, France. And finally, the company wanted access to the region's cotton to fuel its very lucrative trade with China.
So how do you sell all of this, a brutal, profit-driven conquest, to the public back home? You need a good story, and the British were masters at spinning one.
The official line was that they weren't conquerors. Oh no, they were liberators. They argued that a lot of Indian rulers were actually tyrants who had stolen power, and that the British were on this noble mission to, restore the rights of the Indian people.
And this brings us right back around. Let's look at Mysore again. The British public argument was that their goal was simply to put the old Hindu dynasty back on the throne that the current rulers had taken over. But, as we just saw, the real motives? Purely business, control of trade routes and resources. The whole liberation thing was just a very convenient excuse.
So there you have it. It was this powerful mix. Unbelievable personal greed, a brilliant political strategy of playing rivals against each other, and a carefully polished public story of liberation that allowed a private company to build an empire.
And all of that leaves us with one final lingering question. Yeah, this all happened over 200 years ago, but it brings up an issue that's still so relevant today. When a corporation's #1 goal is maximizing profit, what is the ultimate price of the power it's chasing?